All right. So the next one is failure without the F. Brian Schaffran.
Tired of not hearing people. All right, go ahead. So my dad was a pretty handy dude, but I was not allowed to take shop class in high school because my parents believed that college and shop class were mutually exclusive. I wasn't allowed to be surrounded by stoners and flunkies. So I went to college and I flunked out. I bought an old Volkswagen bus and I moved to Los Angeles because I thought I was going to be an actor. And both that Volkswagen and I were always broke. So eventually I had to learn to fix it myself. And for the first time in my life, I learned by doing. I didn't learn by memorizing. I now had the confidence to fail and learn from my mistakes. This woke up an insatiable desire in me to learn everything I possibly could. So I went back to school because I had to be a teacher. I had to get in front of students and I had to wake up their love of learning. It didn't even matter what subject I was going to be teaching. I just needed to get in front of them and wake that up. About 15 years ago, I was teaching high school in Cleveland when we did a thing called Wonder Week. Every adult in the building got to teach their passion for 1 week instead of the subject that we were hired to teach. So for 1 week, I had 12 kids and I exposed them to the wonders of turning wrenches on old motorcycles. I was going to let them see how engines worked. We were going to tear down and rebuild 3 old Hondas. And after about 15 minutes, I found out that none of them had ever held a screwdriver. So eventually, after this week, all the screws had been ruined, all the bolts had been rounded. These bikes had been taken apart in a million pieces, but they did not go back together. I totally failed. But over the next few months, I realized that these kids learned, and they learned a lot, and they loved it because they learned by failing. Up until then, learning meant sitting in a classroom, learning and memorizing abstract theories and facts. These 12 students became better students in their regular classes. Their attendance rates became higher, their feeling of agency over their school, careers grew, they signed up for after-school activities, their grades and attitudes improved, they were totally changed. And I know it sounds crazy, but for me, that love of learning is linked to that old Volkswagen. And for these 12 students, that love of learning is linked to these 3 old Hondas. It's that ancient cool machine that was the missing key for me and for those 12 students. Imagine this country being stocked with kids, high school kids and college kids that possess the confidence to fix the world around them because they got to learn with their hands. That problem-solving mentality is the holy grail in education. And I could no longer stomach teaching students sitting in desks. So my wife and I, a fellow educator, invented MotoGo Cleveland. It's a nonprofit. We put tools in the kids' hands, and we encourage them to make mistakes through building vintage motorcycles. In MotoGo, kids learn by failing, and they solve the problems. Not problems on paper, not the cerebral problems that Eric was talking about. These are problems like stripping screws and rounding bolts. The problems that are right there in front of them that they can touch. During a recent MotoGo class, I had a sophomore that could not read. I quietly read him the next step in the manual so that he could continue. The next day, he sought out the reading specialist. And when she asked why now, he said, "Miss, I have to learn to read the manual because I have to build a motorcycle." Now, that is not the shop class that my father wouldn't let me join. And another student, Lillian, perfect grades in high school, but didn't know she wanted to go to college yet until she took the MotoGo class. Then she became a mechanical engineer. Now she's getting her doctorate in quantum energy exchange at Ohio State University. Crazy. Turns out my dad was wrong all along about shop class. It is actually for everyone. It is not for stoners and flunkies. Once kids realize that the mistakes they make, the failures and the victories all lead to that ultimate success, they're totally changed. They become students of life, students of the world. They get to experience failure without a failing grade. And you know who needs this most? Students that identify as female. Because only a fool believes that getting your hands dirty is man's work. Women are better at almost everything. And when they're finally invited into the spaces that they've historically been told are off limits, they shine. They listen better, they try harder, they take direction easier, they learn from their mistakes faster, they care more, they have more to prove. It's absurd that 51% of our population is never given the opportunity to learn with their hands. Imagine this country's workforce if the pool wasn't limited to just males. The country needs this. Cleveland needs it, and I'm guessing Burlington needs it too. If the next 100,000 high school graduates in Burlington all knew how to fail and problem solve and succeed, the city would become a beacon of ingenuity and work ethic for generations. Shop class can save a city. And on the surface, shop class is still just school. So we must lure the kids in with something cool and sexy and old like a motorcycle. And we can't hold the class in traditional classrooms. We have to let them experience this in a dirty, greasy garage, in a place that doesn't feel like school. We must attract them into the garage with the one object no mother wants their kid to get involved with, the motorcycle. Shop class is not a new concept, but it seems to have disappeared over the last couple decades. We need to rebrand and revamp it because it is so important that kids learn to continue failing. And by protecting me from failure, my dad kept me from the most important learning of my life. Failure is the linchpin to problem solving, and problem solving is the root of every skill known to humans. Shop class is the place where problem solving and failure are best learned.